What's up everybody? Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, hey, I'm Sydney. Every single Thursday I sit down and I talk about the craziest true crime in every single state, the one that spoke out to me the most. So, I don't know what I just said. The one that spoke out to me the most. So, if you like true crime, you should subscribe because I'm here for you every single Thursday. Today is a new day, okay? We have a new setup, we have a new background. I still have my round fluffy chair, but I felt like I needed more, you know what I mean? Like, I rearranged my entire room instead of doing homework, but I rearranged my entire room and I felt like I needed change. I don't know why, but I had this weird feeling that if I changed up my room, better things would happen to me. Whenever I rearrange my room, I feel so much better, and if this is stupid, just be kind, okay? I really tried. I bought a lot of Christmas decorations and I felt like just the chair in the corner was good, but I needed something more in the background so it didn't look so plain. I'm so sorry that I missed last week. Last week was very hard on me. Nothing really drastic happened. It was just I had a lot of schoolwork that I had to do, and school comes first. Today's video, I'm going to give a warning myself because it's awful, okay? There is rape, there's sexual assault, there is child abuse and sexual abuse of a minor, and there's a lot of things. So of course I have my typed up description basically saying that's like a trigger warning. I don't want to upset anybody, but I am letting you know that there is a lot of this story is bad today. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in this story that is possibly the worst thing I've ever heard of. I didn't know until after I did the research and everything for this video that there's already a docu-series on Netflix about this, and this is about the confession killer. But I kind of focus more on the confession killer's love affair that he had going on with this guy. This guy's name is Ottis Toole. So Henry Lee Lucas is the worst, and he's a part of this story because he was a big part of Otis's life, but I will be focusing more on Otis and what happened with him. And obviously he was a big part of the killings that Henry Lucas had. I try to stay away from big killers that everybody knows about, and I didn't even know about this guy, and so when I saw that there was a docu-series, I kind of didn't want to do it. I'm glad that I actually focused more on Otis before I realized that he was even a part of the confession killer. These are all the videos that I watched and all of the articles that I read online, so be kind. If you see something that I missed, just call me out on it, and that's okay, but just be respectful. Anyways, I'm talking a lot. This intro is probably one of the longest intros I've ever done. So without further ado, we will get into the confession killer's sidekick, Ottis Toole of Florida. So Ottis Toole was born on March 5th, 1947 in Jacksonville, Florida, and he had probably the worst childhood I've ever heard of. His mother was a Christian extremist and his father was an alcoholic who abused it and a lot of substances and was just really bad to the kids. And his father made Otis perform really terrible sexual acts on his friends whenever he was really young, probably about the age of 6. And then his father eventually left the family, leaving his crazy mother to fend for the kids. Otis's older sister molested him over and over and made him dress up in girl clothes, and his mom helped his sister out by dressing him up in girl clothes, sent him to school and dresses all the time, and people would bully him and mock him. And it didn't really say if it was because his mom only wanted girls or what, but he did not grow up in the right setting. And it doesn't stop there. His grandmother was a Satanist who used him to dig up graves and went grave robbing for different body parts for her satanic rituals. So she abused him in that way of just, obviously that's illegal, and so he was brought up in a really bad home at a very young age. Besides that, Otis suffered mildly from mental retardation and had epileptic seizures a lot. And he was also a serial arsonist and was sexually aroused by fire. So around the age of 5 or 6 was when Otis was performing the sexual acts on the father's friends. So he said probably about the age of 10, because he was so exposed to that at such a young age. He thinks that's probably why, as to found out he was homosexual. And, you know, that's really sad that he had to be exposed to that at such a young age, because he wasn't really able to figure out his sexuality himself. He had to be forced to do it to other people. So Otis had his first sexual arousal whenever he would look at pornographic magazines, probably about the age of 12. And he also found a guy in his neighborhood who he would perform sexual acts on, and, you know, they would meet up multiple times to have sex. And this was whenever he was 12, and he eventually dropped out of high school and became a male prostitute at the age of 14. In 1962, Otis started hanging around local gay bars, and this is whenever he committed his very first murder at the age of 14. A traveling salesman that he met at a local gay bar, he was not interested in. This man was constantly trying to proposition him into having sexual intercourse with him, and Otis was not having it, and eventually stole the man's car and ran over the man with his own car and killed him. In August of 1964, Otis was not actually arrested for this murder. He was arrested for loitering, and it didn't really say how long he was in jail, but he started going out on the move and traveling to different places in 1966, so he really wasn't in jail for that long for loitering. Between the years of 1966 and 1973, Otis was traveling a lot for male prostitution and panhandling, and he didn't really have a stable job, so that was his only way of income. In Nebraska of 1974, there was a murder that Otis was actually one of the primary suspects for. It was a woman named Patricia Webb that she came up missing and then found her body, and he was a primary suspect, so he eventually left Nebraska pretty quickly after finding out that he was a primary suspect, and he was on the loose. He eventually moved to Colorado, and while he was in Colorado, he actually was another primary suspect of another murder against a woman named Ellen Holman. And because of all these accusations against him, he decided that he was going to move back to Florida and kind of restart his life there. And say if he actually killed those women, but according to later on what we hear in the story, it possibly could be true. So in 1976 is when Otis was back in Florida, and he met Henry Lee Lucas at a soup kitchen, and it was a match made in hell. Now that that's over. So they met at a soup kitchen, and that night Otis went back to Henry Lee Lucas's house, and they had sexual relations. And Henry was 40 at the time, and Otis was 29. Because Henry is a big part in the story, I am going to give a background on Henry's childhood, but this still does focus mainly on Otis. On August 23rd, 1936, Henry was born in Blacksburg, Virginia, and he had also a very, very, very bad childhood. His mom was a prostitute and often would bring men and or her clients home. And, I shouldn't say prostitute, was a sex worker, I'm sorry. She would bring men home, and she would make Henry watch her as she would perform sexual acts on these men for money. She was really, really, really abusive to Henry. She once hit him so bad that it put him in a 3-day coma. And for some reason, like Otis, she made him wear girl clothes. So both men had to wear girl clothes whenever they were young males, young boys. According to Henry, she was also sexually abusive. She forced Henry to have sex with her one time, and she would torture his genitals if he misbehaved ever. And there's no really claims to back that up or evidence. It's later on said that Henry and Otis were both really bad compulsive liars. So this possibly can't be true, but in a way, I believe that it is true, because something has to happen to a child for them to grow up and do the things that these men did later on. So, I mean, if it did happen, then that is the worst thing that I've possibly ever heard of. But if it didn't happen, then it's really shocking because of what happens later on. So when Henry was about 10 years old, he lost an eye due to him and his brother play fighting, and his brother scratching him in the eye with a knife. Yeah, play fighting with knives. And his mom just totally disregarded, what had happened to him, and his eye got infected really bad, and he, she didn't want to pay for a doctor, she didn't want to take him to a doctor, and he was forced to, get his eye removed, so he had a fake eye put in, and this was whenever he was like 10. And just like Otis, Henry committed his first murder whenever he was 14. He met a girl named Laura whenever they were waiting on a bus stop, and he raped and strangled her to death. In 1954, Henry was arrested for 4 counts of burglary, and he was sent to prison. He would have gotten out early, about 1957, but he escaped prison, so he wasn't able to be released until 1959. In 1960, Henry got so fed up with his mom that he actually killed her. They got into a really big argument about how Henry wanted to marry a woman that he had made a pen pal with whenever he was in prison, and his mother was not having it. She basically explained that he had to take care of her, she was getting older, and because he got so mad, she slapped him across the face in the middle of an argument, and this triggered him to the point that he killed her. He said he doesn't really remember what happened, he just remembered looking down. He had a knife in his hand, he looked at her, and her throat was slit. So, I mean, yeah. Like, why did you have a knife in your hand in the middle of an argument? I don't think it was premeditated. I really do believe that it happened in the heat of the argument, but okay, Henry. So because of this, Henry was arrested on second-degree murder and was sent to 20 years in prison. Henry only served about 10 years of the sentence, so about half of the sentence due to prison overcrowding. So he was released in 1970, but not even a year later, he was back in prison because he had tried to kidnap about 3 girls, and he was sentenced to about 5 years for this. Whenever Henry was released in 1975, he had met another pen pal, and he was going to marry this woman, but the marriage did not last long because the woman found out that Henry was sexually abusing her daughter, so they quickly got divorced. Because the lady was really close with her family, she told her family what was going on and why she had to divorce him so quickly, and they chased him out of town. All this was happening in West Virginia, and he was chased down all the way to Florida, and this is where he had met Otis at the soup kitchen. Over the following years, the men caught over thousands of victims, so they claim, and they raped and tortured and killed all of these individuals, but there's no evidence to back up these claims, so it's very hard to determine if these are true or if these stories are lies. They racked up to about 3,000 victims is what they said that they had raped and tortured, men, women, everybody that they could find. This was over the course of about 5 years, and because of how fast they moved and how constant they were moving, they didn't stay in a place for long in a particular time. They never really were caught because they traveled over about 26 states over the course of the 5 years. Henry has, I don't want to say like a famous quote, but he does have a quote where he says that he has killed every single person in every single way there is except poison, and he was also known to teach Otis how to kill. He said that Otis was not killing correctly. These men are gross. Because there were so many victims, most of the victims were hitchhikers or sex workers or whoever they could find that was the most vulnerable. Because they would choose people at random, they didn't really have a set person. You'll have a lot of serial killers, kind of like all of their victims' identities match. Like they all have like brown hair and blue eyes, or they're all women, they're all tall, something like that. There were so many people and so different looking and race, gender, anything. Police really couldn't determine like why these serial killers were targeting a certain person, because they weren't. They were just killing whoever they could. Because it wasn't targeting anybody, it was just an obsession they had with killing people. So over the course of the rapes and the murders, Otis started to practice cannibalism on some of the individuals. He said that he had tried multiple girls, multiple boys. He could taste the difference between men and boys, girls and women, with the age gap and everything. And he even had his own recipe for human barbecue sauce. The secret ingredient in the barbecue sauce was 1 cup of human blood. So to eat people, he had his own recipe for barbecue sauce for the meat of people. So this is where the story takes a turn. Henry left Otis probably whenever everything was starting to wind down. This was whenever they were in Texas. Henry fell in love with Otis's niece, Becky. Becky Powell was 13 years old at the time. So since they met in 1975 and Henry was about 40, that means Henry was probably in his late 40s It just, oh my god, how did... Anyways, Becky went on the journeys with Otis and Henry on their like killing sprees a lot. Since she was traveling a lot and Henry had fell in love with her, he dropped Otis, and the two of them, Becky and Henry, dropped Otis off and they left him in Texas. Upset Otis so bad to the point that he said he had to kill 9 people to blow off steam. He and Becky found a job as a caretaker for, or as caretakers for an older woman. They quickly got fired because they were starting to steal from her, and she noticed, and so they lost their jobs. They didn't have a set job, so they were drifters trying to find a place to stay, and you know, it wasn't a good situation to be in. When Becky was about 16 years old, she told Henry that she was tired, she wanted to go home, she was starting to feel homesick, she didn't want to do this anymore, and this pissed off Henry to the point where he killed her. He raped her body and then dismembered it across a field, different body parts scattered across the field. The field that Henry had murdered Becky in was relatively close to where they used to take care of this elderly woman back in the day. Lured Kate, the 82-year-old woman, into the same field where he had just killed Becky, and then he raped and killed this old woman and stuffed her body into a drain pipe. So because of the theft of the woman, she had alerted police as to what happened, but she didn't press any charges. So because of the death of her and how awful it was, of course Henry became the primary suspect, but they didn't really have any evidence, but he was arrested due to an illegal possession of a firearm. And this was probably about 1983 whenever this happened. So during this time that Henry and Becky were doing the most, Otis had a whole killing spree of his own. Besides the 9 people that he killed whenever he was blowing off steam, Otis became very crazy, aggressive. In January of 1982 is whenever Otis killed a victim that is for sure known that this is, you know, this is the truth. He's not lying about this. He did kill this person. George Sonnenberg was a man that Otis was having sexual relations with. They got into an argument and he barricaded this man into his house and set it on fire and burned him alive. And because of this, he was arrested and sent to 20 years in prison. 20 years for literally burning somebody alive. That's murder. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So as the trial was ending for the George murder, Otis had another murder case happen where it was a trial that started in 1984 where it was the death of 19-year-old Ada Johnson, and he was actually sentenced to life in prison because of this. So now both men are behind bars. They are loving the attention that they're getting, but Otis was kind of more on like the I'm not going to back up these claims side, but Henry was all for telling everybody that he killed people. He was loving the attention. Just started confessing over and over and over how many countless victims that he had, and was just telling the police anything they wanted to hear. And him and Otis actually got the Henry more than Otis, but they got the title the Confession Killers because of how many people they confessed to. So Henry confessed to killing Kate and Becky. Becky, the niece that he fell in love with, and Kate was the elderly woman. And he was sentenced during the trial that he was having for the illegal possession of a firearm. This was all going on, and he confessed to those, and then also confessed to over 100 murders at this time. There was more later on. Whenever he was confessing, he incriminated Otis, who denied any of these claims, but Otis quickly changed his story whenever he realized that Henry was getting special treatment. The special treatment included Henry getting to literally travel across the country, and he got to do multiple interviews, and Otis was not having it. He was like, I was a part of this too. I helped. It's like, you said that you did it, and now you can't go back. At this time, they were racking up over hundreds of murders that they were confessing to. Henry was going on plane rides and eating at nice restaurants, and, you know, Otis started backing up these claims so maybe he could get in on the fun. But probably the biggest bombshell that was dropped was when Otis confessed to killing 6-year-old Adam Walsh that happened in Hollywood, Florida. It was probably one of the biggest headlines of a child murder that you could possibly compare to JonBenet Ramsey or Casey Anthony. It was absolutely wild. This happened back in 1981 whenever Adam was found taken from a a shopping mall that he was stripped away from his mom. It is said that it could possibly be Jeffrey Dahmer at this time, who was committing acts in Miami and South Florida also, but you never really know because both men are such like known serial killers that it really could be either. But Adam's parents actually 100% believe that it was Otis and not Jeffrey. So this happened in July 27th, 1981, whenever this happened with the shopping mall incident where Adam was taken. Walsh, his mother, had went a few hours away from Adam, who he was playing with toys and stuff on one aisle, and she went over to the lighting section to look at lamps or whatever, and whenever she came back, he wasn't there. She tried not to panic. She thought he's young, he wandered off. She walked away. She didn't panic. She just went up to the front, and after walking down the aisle, she couldn't find him, called him to come up to the front, and he never showed up. So of course she did start to panic, and they looked all over the mall and they couldn't find him. So this is when the police got involved and a missing persons report for a child came out. Because of this, because it's a kid, you don't have to wait the whole 24-hour period. So this became national news almost overnight. It was crazy. Everybody was freaking out trying to find Adam Walsh. Sadly, Adam's severed head was found in a drain pipe about 2 weeks later after he was found missing. Otis's confession was taunting and just boasting about how he killed Adam, and he wrote letters to multiple news stations and Disney World, and he also wrote a letter to John Walsh. This was his son, Adam Walsh, and this is why America's Most Wanted started, was because he became an extreme activist. Before all this, he became an extreme activist in, missing children, and this is just really sad because he wrote a letter as to how he killed his son to the father. It's sick. This guy's sick. So at that time, the police didn't believe him. They didn't have any evidence to lead as to if Otis actually had killed Adam. But the case was closed in 2008 whenever the police finally decided that Otis was the killer. A big conspiracy that was happening at this time that was revolving around the two men was the Hand of Death cult they had claimed that they were a part of, and made accusations that the leaders were the ones who were making them to kill all these people. And another big conspiracy that revolved mainly around Henry was that Henry had said that he supplied the poison to the Jonestown massacre, and that he had also killed Jimmy Hoffa, or Hoffa. I don't remember how to say his last name, I'm so sorry. Because Henry was obsessed with killing and also obsessed with lying, he said that he had also made multiple murders in Spain and Japan, but obviously police could find if he had left the country, and they proved that he had never left the country. So, like, why would you lie about that? Why? The police were like, okay, Henry, like, you're done, stop. Like, we know you didn't leave the country. But it was also really weird because there were some times that police were, like, not believing a single word that was coming out of Henry's mouth when it came to descriptions of, cases that were happening. And Henry would often lead investigators to real grave sites where he could explain what had happened to the victim that only the killer would know, and it was proven that whenever they did the autopsies and stuff, that what he had said was what happened to this victim. So Otis was just as wild as making up claims that he had killed all these people. There was one time where he had said that he had murdered a woman, and the police were like, okay, you went into this long confession, but there's a guy that literally already confessed to this. And then Otis was like, well, if you said I didn't kill her, maybe I didn't. Like, these men are weird and crazy. Otis also told police that killing a human is no different than stomping on a bug or killing a hog. I'm sorry, Otis. I'm dead positive that there is a very big difference between killing a bug and killing a human. In total, Henry had confessed to over 3,000 murders, but was only convicted of 9 murders. Police believed that there was close to 100 people that he had killed, but there was only 9 that were proven that he had done for sure. Otis was convicted of 6 murders, even though police believed that there was about 60 for him. Neither men were connected to any of the 3,000 claims that they had, but police do believe that there was about 213 cold cases that had happened that they believed were committed by the men. So the men weren't committed or convicted of every single crime, but it was also just like, what the heck? Like, maybe it was just like a what if game. Over the years of the two men serving their sentences, they remained in contact and would talk on the phone often about their gruesome details of every single murder, often saying really disgusting things that police couldn't listen to. Yeah, Henry found God in prison, said he is a born-again man. He is on the path of religious redemption, okay? This man is a good man now. He is a good man. In 1996, Otis died of cirrhosis of the liver, and in 2001, Henry died of heart failure. I wish that I knew what to say in this, but I'm just torn, okay? Because it could either be all lies or it could be all the truth. But either way, if they're lying, they're sick. If it's truth, they're sick. It's sick. They were liars and manipulators and sociopaths and psychopaths, but I didn't want to add any like gruesome details as to what happened to some of their victims, because there is some things that say that as to what they did to their victims, and you know how long it took, and I don't feel comfortable adding in that kind of details. Obviously, when it comes to murder, they killed people, but I don't like to go into those kind of details because I like to sleep at night. So, and you like to sleep at night. Sorry about that. Sorry that this one was really bad. It's all agreed that these two men are gross, okay? I hope that you guys have a great rest of your week. I'm sorry that I missed last week, but I'll try not to miss again, and if I do, just understand school, okay? I'm almost done. Okay, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you like and subscribe and tell your friends, and hit that notification bell. Even though I do post every Thursday, I want you to be the first one to watch. I want you to get the first view in. I hope that y'all stay safe and have a great rest of your week. Thank y'all so much for watching, and I will see you next Thursday.